Live from the UK, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to Talking Minaret, discussing matters that affect you, streaming to the world and beyond.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to another episode of Talking Minaret. Got a post-Eid episode joined by brother Riz. Some of you might remember him from a previous Libya episode. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
I'm alright, man. How you been?
Alhamdulillah, good. Plenty to catch up on.
Yeah, a lot to catch up on. Most of you will be aware of the Beirut explosion in Lebanon. There's been so many videos flying around with the missile strikes. There's a CNN report with Lebanon's government prime minister, supported by major political parties, including Iranian-backed political parties and militant group Hezbollah, stepped down Monday night, actually, less than a week after a massive explosion in Beirut. I'm sure you've seen this, Riz. You got to admit, events like this usually have a backstory. What's your thoughts on this?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that massive explosion, it really shook the world. It looks nothing like a fireworks. It definitely looked like a, resemblance of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But yeah, you're right. Behind this major event, there's always a political objective. There's a famous quote by Franklin Roosevelt. He stated that in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way. And this, you can cross-apply this to all major events that take place. And then what you can do is link events that take place afterwards. That gives you a hint who was behind this and maneuvering this, and the previous events before this major event that took place, what was happening in Lebanon. If you look at even regarding the bomb blast itself, there's a lot more information coming through. But regarding the ammonium nitrate that was exploded, they said that they had it there for 6 years ago. And if you look at regarding the story behind it, it's very suspicious, and it shows that this has been plotted from years ago against the Lebanese government. The story where they refer to as the cargo ship, in fact, was on the way to Mozambique. And it was, in fact, deferred to Lebanon. And somehow its owner of the cargo ship abandoned tons of ammonium nitrate there, which was millions of pounds. And further documents have coming out how the Lebanese government had been for many times about this ammonium nitrate being stored there, which is unsafe. And they hadn't taken any actions at all. And this is not just, negligence of the state, how they're portraying it as. You do not neglect ammonium nitrate, knowing how explosive it is, and knowing accidents have taken place in places like America and China, which are well known. There's no way anyone will neglect like thousands of tons of ammonium nitrate like that, and no way exploded just randomly by an accident. There's somebody who set down fire.
It definitely came at a time where there's a whole load of domestic and regional issues happening in relation to Hezbollah. We've done a previous podcast on the deal of the century. We'll probably go deeper into that later on. That's also linked with decreasing the influence that Iran and Hezbollah have in that region. And maybe it's a way to target the Lebanese regime and its sectarian structure and its government that gives Hezbollah the upper hand in political decision making, and also, I suppose, to link onto that, Hezbollah therefore also Iran as well, and we know how that's linked to enabling the deal of the century to happen.
Oh, definitely. So he has many different objectives regarding this event. So being the significance of this blast, the government had resigned altogether. The president, a few days after Macron had visited Lebanon. Inshallah, we'll discuss that a bit more, because Macron's visit is very crucial to understanding the objective of Lebanon. But definitely there's is in regard to changing the structure of Lebanon, which in fact historically people don't know. It's Britain and France who have carved out the government structure of Lebanon and made it very sectarian, where the prime minister can be a Sunni, president can be a Christian, and they made it very sectarian based. But however, changing of the structure of Lebanon is very crucial, because it's in line with America's project for the whole Middle East, where he no longer using the sectarian card, which he has been using, creating a Sunni Shia divide the Sunni Shia presence in the Middle East to cause a conflict using the two proxies, using Iran and Saudi. There is two puppets in that region to cause fitna between the Muslims in that region. Now he's no longer uses that card because again these are temporary strategies, but rather now what is looking to remove all these sectarian cards out the way now, and rather going for what you call secular democratic regimes that is trying to form in these area, and this includes Lebanon. So wants to remove this sectarian regime altogether, and this all in line falls with the timing of the deal of the century, which Donald Trump is trying to broke. And we've seen it, in fact, in the news even today. Did you see it regarding the UAE?
Yeah, with the normalization with Israel, the so-called state of Israel.
They're trying to make out, just broke the deal. It's been happening for a very long time. We've been hearing about there've been flights been taking place in Israel and UAE. They've been visiting each other, trading been taking place. They've been slowly testing the water, how people react to that, and now it came out officially between them two. So in regards to Lebanon and the deal of century in Palestine, is very importantly linked because you got a huge population of Palestinians refugees in Lebanon. They're still regarded as refugees in Lebanon. They haven't got, for example, all the rights of a Lebanese citizen because, again, one of the what the Palestinians has been asking for a long time is to resettle back to the region of Palestine, i.e. they want to go back home. However, if they were to get residence in Lebanon or say in Syria or in Jordan, all these countries, so that takes away the card of resettlement back to Palestine. So this deal of the century, I think we have had a podcast before of it. People are not sure about, in summary, what they want to do is the current Palestine, as we know of, that's going to be totally wiped out. It's going to be a whole Israel, and the Palestinian issue, they want to resolve that once for all. So the way they resettle into other areas, they no longer be classified refugees, but the residents of each of the states. So then nobody can use the card of resettling them back.
This deal of the century is having vast effects on the region, and it's to allow more like a disaster of the century to happen. I mean, like, it's not just Lebanon. If you've been following our podcast, and if you've been following, there's been other channels that have been doing great work on it. Voice of the Ummah, Dean Machine Guys, and a few others have talked about it. The entire region is being reshaped. For instance, in Baghdad, they're trying to loosen Iran's grip on that area via al-Qadimi and offering the regime of Bashar al-Assad as a sacrificial lamb to the people of Syria in exchange for their silence of the participation of the future regime in the deal of the century. I think America's figured out the fact that Bashar al-Assad does not fit the criteria, even though he's been protecting the borders of Israel for decades, but he doesn't fit into the future of that region. And I think it's what you just said previously, the fact that they're trying to remove the sectarian card, remove the Iranian influence, and to welcome this so-called deal of the century.
People have to understand, in regards to America, to remove the sectarian card and remove Iran's influence. A lot of people don't know that for Iran to have massive influence in that region, the powerful hand is via Hezbollah. The more empowered Hezbollah is, which has a massive influence in Lebanese government, and remember, they are the only ones who are allowed to be armed as well. Iran utilizes Hezbollah, and as long as Hezbollah is still have strength, Iran will have its influence. So hence why, if you look at these news as well, and this international inquiry they're trying to be called regarding this attack, they're trying to blame the shift towards Hezbollah in order to implicate them into this attack, and in order to disarm them and weaken them. And what people need to understand is that what in effect will do is disempower Iran in that region. That's the real deal behind why they're after Hezbollah.
What was the purpose behind Macron's visit to Lebanon following the whole Beirut Blast?
Oh yes, clearly stated in his statement when he was in Lebanon, he stated that if reforms are not carried out, Lebanon will continue to sink. So if you look at Lebanon, a few days straight after the attack, he was in Beirut when he met the president Michael Owen. If you look at what he did after his meeting and the president's speech after the meeting, that really gives away what was actually happening. In fact, that happened on Friday, the 7th of August, and what he said was, Michael Owen, a foreign intervention via missile or a bomb or any other action is possible. This in regards to the attack. I have requested from Macron to secure the aerial photos of the explosion to ascertain what happened, and if the French do not have them, we will request from them sources. Again, the president was hinting that there's another foreign hand behind this attack. This is not just the incident that taken place. What this also does as well, it shows that fact that Macron was in fact dispatched by America, since what Macron stated to the president that if he carries out structural reforms in Lebanon, he will persuade in fact America to lift the sanctions and ease the pressure on Lebanon. It was also important looking at Macron's action in Lebanon when he in fact met with the civil society forces. In fact, he then assigned the civil society forces tasked with distributing the aid packages separately from the government. And he also met with the religious authorities, especially Patriarch Mark Bechara Buttress Arroa. And he's quite a significant person because he's been recently calling in Lebanon for neutrality of Lebanon. And this neutrality includes the armed neutrality. In fact, if to understand what this actually means, the function of the Lebanese army will be purely confined to a self-defense and military missions. So what this means is it's going to be confiscating the weapons of Hezbollah, because they were the only faction that were allowed to keep the weapons under the pretext of defending the borders against Israel, and is also backed by international community to disarm Hezbollah.
As we're talking about removing the Iranian influence for the deal of the century, did you hear about Jordan support for a single Palestinian-Israeli state?
Popular rulers are openly, bravely coming out now with the treachery. In fact, it was on 21st July when Jordan Prime Minister Omar Razaz, they view the creation of single Palestinian-Israeli state favorably, and they were saying it will give equal rights to so-called both people. And what he quoted was, he said, "But let's work together on an one-state democratic solution. That I think we will look at very favorably. But closing one and wishful thinking about the other is just deceptive." And then he carried on saying that short of that, if we're not going towards a two-state solution, let us know that what kind of one-state solution we're going towards. He openly calling for one-state solution. What this one-state solution is, the removal of whole of Palestine.
Yeah, I think that caused controversy as well in Jordan, because he was forced to comment further afterwards by saying the fact that Jordan will not absorb transfers of Palestinians, so, Jordan doesn't become another Palestine. You know how you mentioned that Omar Azaz? Isn't he linked to somebody within the international framework that has a kind of an oversight over some of the US interests?
Yeah, this should not come as a surprise at all, since Omar Razaz, he's like the stepson of the international institution which actually oversee the U.S. interest, likes of Carnegie Foundation and the World Bank.
Funny you mentioned that. Razaz himself shares the same vision of the one-state solution with the former foreign minister and the member of the Carnegie Institute, Marwan al-Mushair, who for his part stated in the past that the two-state solution was dead in the water and did not rule out the whole one-state solution. This two-state solution has effectively been abandoned by the Trump administration, in all honesty, in favor of the alternative homeland, which is one of the proposals on the table, agreed on between Republicans and Democrats, with a few differences over some of the finer details. The option of the alternative homeland tallies with the whole beliefs of the influential evangelical movement within the deep state of the US, and it is compatible with US intellectuals and political moods.
To be honest, in regards to whether Biden wins or whether Trump gets re-elected, it shows that in the deal of the century, there's no differences, the vision towards it, so that's going to continue. So Muslims shouldn't be fooled into thinking Biden's going to be more Muslim friendly, or Kamala Harris, who's we picked as president for a nominee, or they're going to bring any change to this deal of the century for the Muslims. In fact, they're totally aligned together.
I have a feeling that somehow the Ummah believed that the Democrats are going to be more Muslim friendly, and Muslims probably need to stop looking at Palestine as an issue of the Ummah's children in Palestine and their battle between them and the so-called state of Israel. It's more of an Ummah issue. Palestine and Al-Aqsa belongs to all Muslims. It's an Ummah issue. It's not a Palestinian issue, just like Kashmir isn't a Pakistan issue. Rohingya isn't a Burma issue. It's for all Muslims and the Ummah at large.
I definitely agree with you. Bang on.
On a side note, I know this is completely changed the topic now because quite a few things happened while, when we took the break from Eid. What have you heard what's been happening with Armenia and the Azerbaijan rift? And is it being used to pressure Turkey in some way?
Yeah, definitely. Those who haven't caught up is quite significant, actually. The escalation between them two countries. There's always been tension between them, but I think it's in July when Armenia attacked in the important region on Taurus. I mean, that's very significant for Azerbaijan because it has all the energy routes from there, and it goes into Turkey, and Turkey heavily relies upon the supplies from Azerbaijan there. And what's interesting as well is behind Azerbaijan and Armenia, more deeper if you look into it, Armenia, which hosts many Russian air bases, military bases, in fact was egged on by Russia to attack that region. What that does is in fact causes Turkey to now get distracted from what it's doing is opened many fronts up now. So in the East Mediterranean with gas and oil exploration, in Libya, where it's conflict with Russia as it backs the opposite side. Significant gains, in fact, in Sirte, where it's heading towards. And so Russia, to weaken Turkey, it had to distract it, hence why it egged Armenia to attack that region.
Yeah, I think on a previous podcast we mentioned the fact that Russia differs with Turkey in relation to the whole Libya issue, and we talked about this on a previous podcast. And I think Russia is using this issue to provoke because of the differences that Turkey has with Russia in relation to Libya. It's another way, another state is trying to detract the Muslims in that region. On that issue, we mentioned about Russia. Does the Armenian Prime Minister have links with Russia?
Oh yeah, it does in fact. Nikol Pashinyan in fact came to power following a wave of protests which are linked to the color revolution, which in fact compelled President Sargsyan to in fact step down. But what happened was he nevertheless most probably loyal to Russia because he only succeeded in ceding power with the help of the ruling Republican Party of Armenia, whose in fact membership includes war veterans and is known to have links with Russia.
I think he was they backed by supplying Armenia with Russian gas at preferential prices, so they're in cahoots. Armenia is vital and strategic for Russia. It hosts several Russian military bases. Russia dreads Western attempts to lure Armenia through partnership deals and turn it into NATO's pockets. So you can see how these two states are in fact being used in a way to detract Muslims away from their strategic goals, from liberating certain lands or whatever it might be.
Definitely. And also what's interesting as well, how America's been trying to lure Armenia get away from Russia to the American camp. And if you remember a while ago where America was the one who so-called recognized Armenia genocide as official genocide to anger Turkey, but recognizing that which Armenia has been pushing for a long time, America's trying to win over Armenia, bring it on their side again, so they can use Armenia against Turkey to contain them and also to repel Russian influence.
So how you talked about the Azerbaijan and Armenia issue and how it affects Turkey. What's the latest in relation to Libya? Because I know Turkey and Russia have influence in that area.
Yeah, what's happening is in regards to Turkey, they've been attempting to convince Russia to allow the GNA forces to intercede without any fighting. And remember, Al-Jufra, they're the oil-rich region, very strategic to Libya. However, what Russia wants is Al-Jufra in return for said. However, especially America, what they've been attempting from their side is to tempt Putin to cling on to certain Al-Jufra, not giving them up, and they want to do that by shoring up the forces of the warlord Khalifa Haftar using the Egyptian intervention by al-Sisi. So the Egyptian intervention is in fact intended to encourage Russia to hang on to certain Al-Jufra and not give them up, and to keep military confrontation possible.
Yeah, Definitely, I think the worst case scenario out of that is if Russia and Turkey fail to reach an agreement on handing over Sirte to the GNA in exchange for Al Jufra, it'll just be a renewed, continued war by proxy. I mean, ever since the Greater Middle East Initiative was enacted and it's still been enacted, in fact, but one of its operations, the Arab Spring, the so-called revolution that happened in Libya, the blood of the Ummah has been spilt in those lands ever since that, and it'll continue if this whole confrontation between Russia and Turkey carries on. An agreement hasn't been reached between the two over the whole certain Jufre issue.
However, worth looking at the recent escalation in the eastern Mediterranean of Turkey, where current Turkey is looking to explore for oil and gas, and Macron to curb Turkey into that region on behalf of Greece have sent jet fighters, navy ships in order to stop Turkey.
If Erdogan was to look at it from an Islamic perspective, he should be looking at annexing definitely parts of northern Syria. And, he says about how, you heard about the Hagia Sophia thing. He says Hagia Sophia today and then Al-Aqsa tomorrow. Well, we'll see what happens if he can live up to his word. And he shouldn't be deterred and he shouldn't fall into the traps of, say, Russia. In fact, he should garner support from those Muslims in Libya for rescuing them from the thugs such as Khalifa Haftar. We'll see what he actually does with the international situation.
No, definitely worth keeping on the actions of Turkey as he opened up all the fronts and he acts as a regional power and has become a total independent in the domestic and foreign affairs now. Although we know Turkey is still a secular state with secular constitution, however, its population is Muslim. Having a Muslim country which is independent, domestic and foreign, and become a regional power, this is very significant for the Ummah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, then great. Thanks for coming on this week. Hopefully, see you soon. We'll try to make this more weekly again, get back into the flow of things since Eid. And Assalamu alaikum, everyone.